This is the Epic of Gilgamesh, and this is Tablet 1. The story introduces Gilgamesh, king of Uruk. Gilgamesh, two-thirds god and one-third man, is oppressing his people who cry out to the gods for help. For the young women of Uruk, this oppression takes the form of droit du seigneur, or lord's right, to sleep with brides on their wedding night. For the young men, here is where the tablet is damaged at this point. It is conjectured that Gilgamesh exhausts them through games, tests of strength, or perhaps forced labor on building projects. The gods respond to the people's plea by creating an equal to Gilgamesh, who will be able to stop his oppression. This is the primitive man, Enkidu, who is covered in hair and lives in the wild with the animals. He is spotted by a trapper, whose livelihood is being ruined because Enkidu is uprooting his traps. The trapper tells the sun god Shamash about the man, and it is arranged for Enkidu to be seduced by Shamhat, a temple prostitute. His first step towards being tamed. After 6 days and 7 nights of continuous lovemaking, she takes Enkidu to a shepherd's camp to learn how to be civilized. Gilgamesh, meanwhile, has been having dreams about the imminent arrival of a beloved new companion. Tablet 2. Shamhat brings Enkidu to the shepherd's camp. When he is introduced to a human diet and becomes the night watchman, learning from a passing stranger about Gilgamesh's treatment of new brides, Enkidu is incensed and travels to Uruk to intervene at a wedding. When Gilgamesh attempts to visit the wedding chamber, Enkidu blocks his way, and they fight after a fierce battle. Enkidu acknowledges Gilgamesh's superior strength, and they become friends. Gilgamesh proposes a journey to the cedar forest to slay the monstrous demigod Humbaba in order to gain fame and renown. Despite warnings from Enkidu and the Council of Elders, Gilgamesh is not deterred. Tablet 3. The elders give Gilgamesh advice for his journey. Gilgamesh visits his mother, the goddess of Ninsun, who seeks the support and protection of the sun god Shamash for their adventure. Ninsun adopts Enkidu as her son, and Gilgamesh leaves instructions for the governance of Uruk in his absence. Tablet 4. Gilgamesh and Enkidu journey to the cedar forest. Every few days they camp on a mountain and perform a dream ritual. Gilgamesh has 5 terrifying dreams about falling mountains, thunderstorms, wild bulls, and a thunderbird that breathes fire. Despite similarities between his dream figures and earlier descriptions of Humbaba, Enkidu interprets these dreams as good omens and denies that the frightening images represent the forest guardian. As they approach the cedar mountain, they hear Humbaba bellow and have to encourage each other not to be afraid. Tablet 5. The heroes enter the cedar forest. Humbaba, the guardian of the cedar forest, insults and threatens them. He accuses Enkidu of betrayal and vows to disembowel Gilgamesh and feed his flesh to the birds. Gilgamesh is afraid, but with some encouraging words from Enkidu, the battle commences. The mountains quake with the tumult and the sky turns black. The god Shamash sends 13 winds to bind Humbaba, and he is captured. The monster pleads for his life, and Gilgamesh pities him. He offers Gilgamesh to be king of the forest. He will cut the trees for him and be his slave. Enkidu, however, is enraged and asks Gilgamesh to kill the beast because he knows that Humbaba is lying. Humbaba curses them both, and Gilgamesh dispatches him with a blow to the neck. The two heroes cut down many cedars, including a gigantic tree that Enkidu plans to fashion into a gate for the temple of Enlil. They build a raft and return home again along the Euphrates with the giant tree and the head of Humbaba. Tablet 6. Gilgamesh rejects the advances of the goddess Ishtar because of her mistreatment of previous lovers, like Dumuzi. Ishtar asks her father Anu to send Gagalana, the bull of heaven, to avenge her. When Anu rejects her complaints, Ishtar threatens to raise the dead, who will outnumber the living and devour them. Anu becomes frightened and gives in to her. Ishtar leads Gagalana to Uruk, and causes widespread devastation. It lowers the level of the Euphrates River and dries up the marshes. It opens up huge pits that swallow 300 men without any divine assistance. Enkidu and Gilgamesh attack and slay it, and offer up its heart to Shamash. When Ishtar cries out, Enkidu hurls one of the hindquarters of the bull at her. The city of Yoruk celebrates, but Enkidu has an ominous dream about his future failure. Tablet 7. In Enkidu's dream, the gods decide that one of the heroes must die because they killed Hambada and Gagalana. Despite the protestations of Shamash, Enkidu is marked for death. Enkidu curses the great door he has fashioned for Enlil's temple. He also curses the trapper and Shamhat for removing him from the wild. Shamash reminds Enkidu of how Shamhat fed and clothed him and introduced him to Gilgamesh. Shamash tells him that Gilgamesh will bestow great honors upon him at his funeral and will wander into the wild, consumed with grief. Enkidu regrets his curses and blesses Shamhat. In his second dream, however, he sees himself being taken captive to the netherworld by a terrifying angel of death. The underworld is a house of dust and darkness, whose inhabitants eat clay and are clothed in bird feathers, supervised by terrifying beings. For 12 days, Enkidu's condition worsens. Finally, after a lament that he could not meet a heroic death in battle, he dies. Tablet 8. Gilgamesh delivers a lamentation for Enkidu, in which he calls upon mountains, forests, fields, rivers, and animals, and all of Yoruk to mourn for his friend. Recalling their adventures together, Gilgamesh tears at his hair and clothes in grief. He commissions a funerary statue and provides grave gifts from his treasury to ensure that Enkidu has a favorable reception in the realm of the dead. A great banquet is held where the treasures are offered to the gods of the netherworld. Just before a break in the text, there is a suggestion that a river is being dammed, indicating a burial in a riverbed, and in the corresponding Sumerian poem, the death of Gilgamesh. Tablet 9. Tablet 9 opens with Gilgamesh roaming the wild, wearing animal skins, grieving for Enkidu. Fearful of his own death, he decides to seek Utnapishtim, the faraway, and learn the secret of eternal life. Among the few survivors of the Great Flood, Utnapishtim and his wife are the only humans to have been granted immortality by the gods. Gilgamesh crosses a mountain pass at night and encounters a pride of lions. Before sleeping, he prays for protection to the moon god Sin. Then, waking from an encouraging dream, he kills the lions and uses their skins for clothing. After a long and perilous journey, Gilgamesh arrives at the twin peaks of Mount Mashu, at the end of the earth. He comes across a tunnel which no man has ever entered, guarded by 2 terrible scorpion men. After questioning him and recognizing his semi-divine nature, they allow him to enter it, and he passes under the mountains along the road of the sun in complete darkness. He follows the road for 12 double hours, managing to complete the trip before the sun catches up with him. He arrives at the Garden of the Gods, a paradise full of jewel-laden trees. Tablet 10. Gilgamesh meets Aloif Siduri, who assumes that he is a murderer or thief because of his disheveled appearance. Gilgamesh tells her about the purpose of his journey. She attempts to dissuade him from his quest, but sends him to Urshanabi, the ferryman, who will help him across the sea to Utnapishtim. Gilgamesh, out of spontaneous rage, destroys the stone giants that live with Urshanabi. He tells him his story, but when he asks for his help, Urshanabi informs him that he has just destroyed the only creatures who can cross the waters of death, which are deadly to the touch. Urshanabi instructs Gilgamesh to cut down 120 trees and fashion them into punting poles. When they reach the island where Utnapishtim lives, Gilgamesh recounts his story, asking him for his help. Utnapishtim reprimands him, declaring that fighting the common fate of humans is futile and diminishes life's joys. Tablet 11. Gilgamesh observes that Utnapishtim seems no different from himself, and asks him how he obtained his immortality. Utnapishtim explains that the gods decided to send a great flood. To save Utnapishtim, the god E told him to build a boat. He gave him precise dimensions, and it was sealed with pitch and bitumen. His entire family went aboard, together with his craftsmen and all the animals of the field. A violent storm then arose, which caused the terrified gods to retreat to the heavens. Ishtar lamented the wholesale destruction of humanity, and the other gods wept beside her. The storm lasted 6 days and nights, after which all the human beings turned to clay. Utnapishtim weeps when he sees the destruction. His boat lodges on a mountain, and he releases a dove, a swallow, and a raven. When the raven fails to return, he opens the ark and frees its inhabitants. Utnapishtim offers a sacrifice to the gods, who smell the sweet savor and gather around. Ishtar vows that just as she will never forget the brilliant necklace that hangs around her neck, she will always remember this time. When Enlil arrives, angry that there are survivors, she condemns him for instigating the flood. E also castigates him for sending a disproportionate punishment. Enlil blesses Utnapishtim and his wife, and rewards them with eternal life. This account matches the flood story that concludes the epic of Atrahasis. See also Gilgamesh flood myth. Analysis. The main point seems to be that when Enlil granted eternal life, it was a unique gift. As if to demonstrate this point, Utnapishtim challenges Gilgamesh to stay awake for 6 days and 7 nights. Gilgamesh falls asleep, and Utnapishtim instructs his wife to bake a loaf of bread on each of the days he is asleep, so that he cannot deny his failure to keep awake. Gilgamesh, who is seeking to overcome death, cannot even conquer sleep. After instructing Ushnabi, the ferryman, to wash Gilgamesh and clothe him in royal robes, they depart for Uruk. As they are leaving, Utnapishtim's wife asks her husband to offer a parting gift. Utnapishtim tells Gilgamesh that at the bottom of the sea there lives a boxthorn-like plant that will make him young again. Gilgamesh, by binding stones to his feet so he can walk on the bottom, manages to obtain the plant. Gilgamesh proposes to investigate if the plant has the hypothesized rejuvenation ability by testing it on an old man once he returns to Uruk. Unfortunately, when Gilgamesh stops to breathe, it is stolen by a serpent, who sheds its skin as it departs. Gilgamesh weeps at the futility of his efforts, because he has now lost all chance of immortality. He returns to Uruk, where the sight of its massive walls prompts him to praise this enduring work to Ushnabi. Tablet 12. This tablet is mainly an Akkadian translation of an earlier Sumerian poem. Gilgamesh in the Netherworld, also known as Gilgamesh, Enkidu, and the Netherworld, although it has been suggested that it is derived from an unknown version of that story. The contents of this last tablet are inconsistent with previous ones. Enkidu is still alive, despite having died earlier in the epic. Because of this, its lack of integration with the other tablets, and the fact that it is almost a copy of an earlier version, it has been referred to as an inorganic appendage to the epic. Alternatively, it has been suggested that its purpose, though crudely handled, is to explain to Gilgamesh and the reader the various fates of the dead in the afterlife, and in an awkward attempt to bring closure, it both connects the Gilgamesh of the epic with the Gilgamesh who is the king of the Netherworld, and is a dramatic capstone whereby the 12-tablet epic ends on one and the same theme, that of seeing with which it began. Gilgamesh complains to Enkidu that various of his possessions, the tablet is unclear exactly what, the different translations include a drum and a ball, have fallen into the underworld. Enkidu offers to bring them back. Delighted, Gilgamesh tells Enkidu what he must and must not do in the underworld if he is to return. Enkidu does everything which he was told not to do. The underworld keeps him. Gilgamesh prays to the gods to give him back his friend. Enlil and Suin don't reply, but E and Shamash decide to help. Shamash makes a crack in the earth, and Enkidu's ghost jumps out of it. The tablet ends with Gilgamesh questioning Enkidu about what he has seen in the underworld.